About, I don't know, it was 2009, and I was asked to present at the meeting of the minds, and it was put on by PT on the Net, and they called in a whole bunch of us and got a big audience together. And as I was watching one of the presenters, it struck me as absolutely hilarious. He would put up a slide of someone and go, "This is exercise," and it was like a chest press machine. And then he put up a picture of a dancer kind of in space jumping, and he said, "This is motion. This is movement." It's like, well, they're both static pictures, dude. And if you saw them in real life, they'd both be moving. So what are you talking about? Well, here's the problem. This all goes back to this idea of don't train muscles, train motions. But there's a problem with that, a big problem with that. Number one, what do you think it is that moves you? It's muscle, guys. And I know there's the whole fascial conversation, but realize that every single one of my quadriplegic patients' fascia was intact. It was their neuromuscular system that was not. So back to this idea of motion versus muscle, take a look at this. If I had something in my hand and I did this, your biased eyes would go, "Oh, that's a press." And I would say, "You just chose muscles." And you made it up because you call this a press. It could also be an eccentric row if I was lowering a weight that was on the end of a cable over there. The motion is unchanged. The key difference, the direction of resistance and what you call it, which is not based on the motion at all. And the direction of resistance it determines which muscles are involved, because the guys required to lower this row or raise it are the opposite of the ones that we challenged or involved in concentrically lifting a load that was shoving back or eccentrically lowering it. The motion is unchanged. Think of it this way. Think about abduction. Just the motion of abduction. Here I am abducting my arm. Now, you're telling me it's all about the motion and you just train abduction and it'll all be the same? So if I'm seated upright, abducting, or I'm lying supine on this table and I'm abducting, or I lie prone on this table and I abduct, or you hang me upside down and I abduct, you're telling me those are all the same because I'm training abduction? You're wrong. Those are all four different. Because the direction of resistance relative to the body itself, specifically the shoulder joint and the shoulder girdle, the direction of resistance was different. Therefore, the muscular involvement was totally different. The recruitment was different. Who was required in that internal tug of war against that external resistance? That changed in each one of those. It is all about muscle. In fact, motion is simply a matter of net forces, or in the case of the human body, net torque. Who's winning the tug of war? Whether my arm goes up or goes down is a matter of internal torque production against external force or torque application. In fact, exercise is not about movement at all. It's about internal force production against external force application. Whether you choose to move or not is simply a matter of how much tension you come up with or don't come up with or can or can't come up with in order to fight this external load. Now that may seem really confusing, but it's really simple. And here's the interesting thing too that goes along with this same idea. Well, we're training movement patterns. When you're doing a squat, you're training a movement pattern. Yeah, what you're really doing is a coordinated effort of torque generation around each individual joint. And people go, no, it's all about integration. Yes, the integration of what? There's nothing to integrate except individual pieces. And it's my torque generating capability at my knee, at my ankle, at my hip, around my spine, etc. that are the key factors to this. And the funny thing is when people go, oh, a leg extension, see, that's not training the movement pattern. You can do leg extensions all you want to, and it won't improve your squat. That is untrue and proven inaccurate. There are countless cases where people have not trained squatting, have improved force production or torque output around the knee and around the hip and in the spine to stabilize, and improve their squat across a 6-month period of time without squatting at all. Now, yes, you're not going to get better at squatting without practicing. And there's nothing wrong with squat as an exercise for the people who are built for it and whose goals require it. But we've got to get off this idea this bias, this blindness, that just accepting what we've been taught about integration versus this thing the world mistakenly calls isolation, about the idea we're training movement, you're training force producers. There's no way around it. One of the ways we say it at RTS in class is there's the idea of training hardware versus training software. And the idea that you're building your force producers, you're building your machine, versus the software that coordinates their efforts to do things like balance versus squat versus jump, all of which require both. In fact, the health benefits, if someone said, oh, I'm a diabetic, my doctor said exercise. The improvement in a diabetic's internal chemistry doesn't come from a movement pattern. It comes from the chemical changes associated with changing tissue, altering things like muscle. It is the hardware that creates the chemical changes, the adaptation of the hardware, that improves things like health for a cardiac patient or a diabetic patient. So these are really interesting things. Now, some of you said, I can't believe he brought up leg extensions. Doesn't he understand that leg extensions have problems like shear? Actually, yeah, I understand that they don't have problems like shear because I calculate them in my course, this RTS course. We calculate those. We spend about an hour out of a specific mastery course talking about shear. And that things like the shoulder are far greater concerns for shear than the knee is, unless there are specific ligamentous deficiencies. And then people go, oh, but leg extensions aren't functional. We just covered that, guys. There's nothing not functional about improving the function of the knee. There's not a single multi-joint exercise wherein the load, when you're fully straightened at the knee, every multiple joint exercise, the load is balanced through the leg. There is no challenge. There is no load. There is no moment arm in multiple joint exercises, squats, lunges, leg presses, at full extension. And sorry guys, it's required. If you were to stumble, you need strength at full extension. You need control at full extension. The leg extension is the best way to do that. But here's another problem with me saying that. 99% of the leg extension machines out there suck. They're terrible. You can't just go buy one, and you certainly can't go buy the cheapest, and you can't buy the one with the coolest tubing. Most of them suck. And even if you got one with a pretty decent resistance profile and actually had the axis located in a place that worked for most people and actually was reasonably adjustable up and down the tibia for a variety of different scenarios, including altering knee forces, even if you found one that was pretty good, 100% of the trainers out there in average fitness centers don't know how to use them. They have absolutely no idea how to align the degrees of freedom of the knee in order to optimize the joint's integrity, in order to manipulate things around and for arthritis, in order to help with things like chondromalacia, in order to alter the forces for things like excessive Q angles, and even to alter the forces of valgus as the knee starts to wear due to that. See, a lot of these things, it's not about fixing them. It's about altering the exercise for them. And a leg extension can be, for many of these people with knee and patellofemoral pathologies, one of the absolute best tools. Where did all this start? You got to start learning. It's not about blindly, randomly, and happily moving. It's about understanding forces and force production.